if anybody out there is listening, which I'm sure they're not, I want to do Zion in the Grand Canyon so bad, but I keep asking, like, how do you get invited to that? And they never really answer me. So, um,
Zion, if you're listening.
Zion, Zion.
Hello, and welcome to the Practical Palette Podcast.
I'm Tara.
And I'm Mark, and we'll explore the world of fine art and representational painting through the lens of philosophy, art history, and our own art making practices. Today, Tara and I will be talking about plein air painting. Hi, Tara.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this morning?
I'm not too bad. Yeah, just having a good start to the week. We had some colder weather this weekend, but yeah, how are things over by you?
We did too, and I know last time we talked, we were talking about whether the color was changing. It was as soon as I told you no, it just started
Mhm.
lighting up in all different colors. So it's been really beautiful here.
Yeah, nice. Actually, since we're talking about plein air painting, on Friday I judged a plein air event down in La Crosse, Wisconsin,
Okay.
which is always an interesting experience. Um, Stepping away from the creative side and getting into a much more, well, judgmental side.
Hmm.
Um, it's yeah, a fun time.
Did anybody like knock your socks off?
There were definitely a few. For it being Wisconsin painters, I mean, there were some Minnesota painters as well, but I knew a few of them, but not as many as I would have thought.
Hmm.
So it's always fun to see a new artist who you feel like you should be familiar with, um, but they come in out of the blue and really impress you. So yeah, there were some really good paintings, and definitely fall colors in that show. Anyway, well, speaking of plein air, I guess that's what we're talking about today, huh?
It is. I think it's a topic that a lot of people, there's such a huge interest in it. And I think a lot of people have technical questions about, what kind of supplies to bring outside or what kind of easel did you start with or things like
Hmm.
that. Um, so I think it's a good kind of jumping off point for anybody who has an interest in it who perhaps hasn't done it before.
Hmm.
Um, but we also have some background in the event arena, which is nice.
Hmm.
So we can kind of talk about the back room stuff of that. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, we should probably just start at the beginning. How did plein air come into your life, Tara?
I'm so random. We've talked about this in the first one, how I'm more impulse and you're more order, which is, I
Hmm.
think, a fun combo.
Hmm.
Um, and my first plein air was me deciding that I needed to do it on a day when it was -5 outside.
Oh,
Why?
jeez.
I don't know. I didn't have an easel. I literally took the kids' Crayola easel outside.
Hmm.
I had my pastels just sitting on the ground.
Hmm.
And I, of course, primed a board that was 30/40 because,
Hmm.
I can't do
Yeah,
anything small.
yeah.
And um, it was so fun. I had to wear gloves and I would come into the house and look at the painting through the bay window, like, oh, what do I think? What do I think? And then I see it
Hmm.
blowing over and I'm running out to catch it. Um, so it was such a good memory for me that first
Hmm.
painting that was and I had so when I was in college, I did take art classes, of course, and we went out one time in college, which probably is more than most colleges
Hmm.
do with plein
Hmm.
air.
Yeah,
Um, but so this, I guess, technically was my second time ever, but certainly left really good memories. And I was just so excited, and it was cold, and it was fast, and it was fun, and
yeah.
so it was a good experience. How about you?
I
What was your first one? Do you remember?
I don't know about a first one specifically. So at the time when I started doing it, I was a caricature artist, and my buddy Antoine Ramar, who you know,
Hmm.
um, we were drawing at county fairs and theme parks and stuff like that, and we just kind of started going out like when we weren't working, we would go out and do these field sketches just because it seemed like something we should do. It's we were also doing illustration. We weren't just doing caricatures full time, but um, it seemed like that would be a good way to build our visual vocabulary, learn things about color and composition. And it just seemed like that thing that artists did. I didn't know anyone that had done it, but, I probably saw it in a book somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, that seems like a fun time. Um, but very similar to you, I love your story because it shows this kind of like fearlessness and naivete going into it. So like, yeah, I'm just gonna go do that. And yeah, and so I had a $10 tripod I bought at Walmart and had to bring out a little folding table to put my palette on, and everything was so janky and uh, none of it, I mean, the paintings weren't good, but the process was, uh, you know, certainly frustrating because you don't have the correct setup and you don't know what you're doing. Uh, but I think you need a certain amount of either success or just having a good time that first time to make you want to come back. Was that your
Mhm.
experience? So, I mean, it sounds like it was overall a good experience.
Yeah, and it's funny because my first, show where I saw that other people were doing this too, and it was at a local agricultural center. And my work study job when I was in high school was at a frame shop.
Hmm.
So I have tons of experience with framing. And and so I go to this event and I had no idea you needed a frame. I was so like, that's what I do. Like, how do
Hmm.
I not know that that's what I needed kind of thing. And so I found this spot like up on a hill. Like you, there's so many different iterations of easels,
Hmm.
how that has kind of evolved into figuring out a setup and a system that really works for what you're doing, be
Hmm.
it medium, be it scale, be it the type of conditions you're in, is it windy? Do you, especially in pastel, there's a lot of boxes and setups that are very much like making a sail, right? You
Hmm.
put your painting on the top
Hmm.
painting panel holder piece, and then the pastels kind of sit flat, and then you've effectively made a sailboat.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's funny to see all those different iterations, but I went to that first event and I had no idea you needed a frame, and I was horrified and totally embarrassed.
Hmm.
And I think I got an honorable mention or something. But I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe that I don't have a frame. It was terrible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah, I think it speaks to your impulsive nature. You didn't read the literature.
well, it's funny and like I don't even know. It must have said it somewhere, but
Yeah, yeah.
I had no idea. I had never even been to a plein air event. I didn't know what
Hmm.
to expect at all.
Hmm.
So it was kind of fun um, to have that experience.
Yeah.
But
I should say for the listeners who aren't familiar, for each one of these shows, and we'll probably get into this a little bit more later, but there's always a prospectus, and sometimes those can be like 3, 4, or 5 pages long, and it feels like it's this legalese, like, and artists, of course, do not want to read all that.
well, and
But
each one's so different too.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And like after you do enough of the shows, you start to understand what are the bullet points that you need to pay attention to.
Hmm.
Because a lot of it is somewhat like boilerplate stuff. Um, but yeah, if you've never done one before, I actually my very first show, um, I had I did bring a frame, luckily, but I turned in my painting, and when I went to the show, I hadn't signed it. I hadn't signed the painting.
Hmm.
And when I went to the reception, someone had scratched in my name and signed it for me. And
What?
yeah, and at first I was really offended by this. I'm like, how dare they? But apparently it was in the prospectus that your work had to be signed.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I'm like, well, that's very strange. But ever since then, I have been signing my work like that with the little sgraffito. just scratch your name at the very
Yeah,
end.
I find it's the easiest way to sign a painting,
Hmm.
personally. It's
Yeah.
like I don't want a teeny tiny brush and have to figure out how to get,
Right.
your name
Yeah.
on there. But I
Yep.
can't believe somebody did that. That's wild.
Yeah. I don't know who it was, but I don't know. The painting sold, so that's fine.
It's living out there somewhere under a
Yep.
false pretense.
Right. Exactly.
That's funny.
So I guess that's kind of our first experience. What was it about plein air that kind of got you interested? Why did you go outside on that cold day?
I don't even remember if I'm being perfectly honest with you.
Hmm.
I just randomly decided I wanted to do it. I have four kids.
Hmm.
Not I don't want this to be like kid show, but people would ask, you know, how you learn the process that you learn and the time that you do it or whatever. And I would just paint when the kids were sleeping or taking naps, which was like that kind of magic 2 hour window of time.
Hmm.
And I had never done pastels until I had the kids. So, um, the twins are now 13. I should know that. No, they're 14. Sorry, they're 14. There's too many of them. I can't keep track. So the twins are now 14. They just had a birthday, sorry.
Hmm.
And so 14 years ago, I said to my husband, I was like, I need to get out of the house or I'm going to go crazy. I need to go take a class somewhere. I need to get out of here.
Hmm.
And so I took a course at the community college. That's how I learned to pastel.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what was great about the course was they showed you all the different materials that were available. It was not about content, about,
Hmm.
drawing or color or composition or anything like that. It was literally this is a hard pastel, this is a soft pastel, this is velour paper, this is sanded paper, this
Hmm.
is, a wash, this is without a wash. It was just a very technical kind of thing, which was perfect for me because that was the information that I needed to grab.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I have no idea why I randomly decided to do
Hmm.
that.
What
I was
was it
just like,
about pastels specifically? Presumably you did some oil painting or at least acrylics or
I
something in
did
college.
do oil painting and I did mixed media and I did printmaking in college. And there's something about the immediacy of pastel where there is
Hmm.
no extension between you and your medium, right? It's like
Hmm.
there's no brush, there's no mixing, it's just a very intuitive, responsive kind of medium, you know?
Hmm.
There's something about it that's very hands-on and very, immediate, which of course appeals to
Hmm.
someone who's impulsive and has a short attention span
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
like myself. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, so I just fell in love with the medium. But
Hmm.
that was my first time I had ever picked up a pastel. And so, when I first started doing events and stuff, there weren't many people doing pastels.
Hmm.
And this last event that we were just both at indoor, I was
Hmm.
shocked. There were what, six of us pasteling,
At least
I
four
think.
or five. Yeah, there was a good group of you guys.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
really surprised because I'm typically the only one or maybe two
Hmm.
people will be there.
Yeah.
But we had a nice group at the Door County
Yeah.
last
It
year.
was like probably four or five watercolor artists too.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, usually it's yeah, 90% oil painters and then the token watercolor artist or
Right.
pastelist.
Right. Which
Um,
is always gets me when they have like a watercolor award.
uh,
Like, what the hell?
yeah.
Like, come on. We have pastel here too. Are we going to do acrylic and gouache or just watercolor? Like, come on.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's like a water media award, which still excludes you.
Like, what? Let me throw some water on it. See what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, there you go. Um, yeah, do you ever do well, I guess it's a tangent, but do you ever do like some kind of a wash at the beginning, either with watercolor or
I've done it before. I just feel like I don't like, I like the directness of
Mhm.
just direct application. There's something I think that's more confident and strong about that.
Hmm.
That appeals to me personally. That does not mean that I think that washes are invaluable or not valuable or
No, I can see
bad
that
per
though.
se. It's
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
different way of doing it.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you're getting too bogged down with process or layering techniques,
Hmm.
that does kind of take away from the energy that your work tends to have.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think too, a lot of times with washes, in my opinion, again, and this is with oil painters as well, it's essentially you're toning your paper.
mhm,
So all the paper that I work on is mid-tone or darker. So
mhm,
it's already doing some of the homework for me when I start that I
mhm.
don't need to go in and do a wash. It's already been, you know,
Yeah,
toned down.
sure.
I like this idea that I heard once that like if you're using a surface that is mid-tone or darker, you have the option to make it lighter or darker. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if you're using a surface that's white, you can only make it darker,
Yeah,
right? So
yep.
it's this nice kind of push-pull across.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, yeah, some of that process, um, should we just get into like what is a
Yeah.
typical plein air painting experience like?
It's
Uh,
a lot of prep work, don't you think?
it certainly can be. Um, I mean, I've got just in terms of my setup, I've got essentially like a go bag where it's a backpack, it's my medium, my mineral spirits, my tubes of paint, my brushes are all, I mean, sometimes it's all packed and ready to go whenever.
Hmm.
Um, Not always, but it's very quick to load that up and then just head out the door. But of course, that's been years in the making of knowing exactly what I need. Uh, but yeah, so I mean, if you're doing an event, there's way more planning and logistics involved, certainly. But if I'm just going out by myself, I could be out the door in 5 minutes. Um, but yeah, for well, for you, like, what's your setup look like? I know you've got a big tripod. Uh,
Yeah, I love the Gloucester easel. It's the Take It easel.
mhm,
I tried so many different easel iterations.
mhm,
I spent a small fortune on just trying everything that was pretty much out there. And like I said, a lot of the pastel setups that are geared toward plein air work are um, a panel holder,
mhm,
a area for your pastels to sit flat, typically in a box that kind of opens up like a book.
mhm,
And it's on tripod legs, and you make a sail for yourself. So
mhm,
it's very inefficient for certainly for anybody that's painting over, I would say 12 by 16. If you're
mhm,
like painting little stuff all the time, that's sufficient, I would say. But if you want to paint anything bigger than that, I don't see how a Gloucester is not like the way to go. And it
mhm,
comes with its own little shelf, so you can just like set your pastels on the little legs, the little V piece that comes out
mhm,
of the legs, and it's just to me the best setup for something that's really stable.
mhm,
Um, and then as far as the pastel box, I got tired of lugging around those heavy wooden boxes because it
mhm.
gets heavy. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
joke like I'm carrying around a box of rocks, but there is like some
essentially.
weight to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I found these aluminum presentation boxes that are just like a really, really thin aluminum box. So it's nice and sturdy,
Mhm,
but very lightweight.
mhm,
And I just lined it with foam and
mhm.
put my pastels in, and then I just put two rubber bands around it. Um, I would show it to you, but it's kind of messy right now. Shocking. Um, and then I just throw it in a backpack. So I have that, and I have my paper on a board and that Take It easel, and that's really all I need.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and I was thinking when you were talking about your setup, do you have a specific type of palette that you like to take as far not necessarily like the physical palette, but what colors that you're going to bring with you to feel like you're hitting
Mhm.
all your bases outside?
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you the same thing, but so I have the same palette in the studio and outside. It's like 13 colors, something like that. And I know that I should get the smaller tubes, but I just hate the idea of being outside and running out of paint. So I always have my big tubes with me. So it's like an extra probably 5 pounds that I'm carrying around in my backpack,
Hmm.
which is not necessarily an issue if I'm not hiking super far, but like if I'm painting out in Colorado and I'm hiking up a mountain, you feel it definitely. Um, I guess I have at sometimes I'll just squeeze the paint out on the palette and just know that I'm going to be painting small that day. So then I leave the paints in the truck um, if I need to save that weight. But no, I just use the same colors every time. But how about you? I mean, because I can mix colors where you are limited to whatever it is that you bring with you. Uh, how do
Yeah,
you?
I try, and if I'm going to a location where I know, let's say you're going out west and there's a lot of orange,
Mhm,
um, I would kind of cater my box to be a little more orange or warm heavy.
mhm,
Typically what I like to do is in the box when you're organizing it, kind of make a traditional rainbow in the middle.
mhm,
So just starting with a red purple actually is how I
mhm,
like to start. Red purple to and then red, red orange orange, all the
mhm,
way across back to purple. So then by the time it kind of cycles back over, you're back on red purple, if that
mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I go up in value and down in value. So I
Mhm,
look at the color that I've established across that center line and go lower value to like the darkest dark of that color that I can find,
mhm,
and then the same upward. So if I do that, then I have a pretty solid box of pretty much everything that I could possibly need. Um, and there are times that I run out of colors that I want.
mhm.
There are times where I'm really attracted to a certain color in a location, and then I kind of overuse that color, and then I'm like, oh crap, there's none of that left. And there is that piece of making sure that the pastel that you have can fill the amount of space that you're wanting to fill on your actual paper, because, it only lasts so long before it's gone.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that piece too. But yeah, I try and just have the broadest palette that I can, knowing that if I run out of a specific color, I can rely on value and say, it doesn't exactly matter that it's not the right color, but it is the right value.
Mhm.
To me, that is more important a lot of times than the color per se.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a whole conversation on its own. But when you're selecting your specific pigments, are you thinking? I mean, it'd probably be somewhat, maybe not easy, but you could think about it when you're loading your box, looking at specific harmonies. So, like if you need certain neutrals, for instance, or maybe more high chroma colors, Uh, if you look at your box, all the colors are like playing well together in the box. Does that
Hmm.
help you know? Like if I don't have the specific color that I'm seeing, I at least have something in that ballpark that I know will harmonize with these other colors that I've selected.
Hmm.
Is that process present or?
It's really funny. I will throw a couple neutrals in just because of the fact that as you degrade in value up and down, as you're
Mhm,
you're kind of stepping away from the purest like saturation or hue or intensity, whatever word you want to use.
mhm,
And so as you step away from that, there is still chroma there, but it is starting to get further away from that kind of natural state of kind of the most intense color that's available.
mhm,
Um, I'm finding that it's more interesting to me to find two values that are exactly the same
mhm.
and force them to play nicely together and create that neutral
Oh,
um,
sure.
together.
Mhm,
And so if I don't have that neutral in the box, I know that I can take two exact same values and force them to play nicely together and get that thing that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I don't do
Yeah.
it all that often. Um, well, maybe I do. I don't know. I feel like I've been doing it more lately than I ever used to, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's a fun thing, and I think it gives volume to a thing if you can kind of get same value, different color in the
Yeah.
same space.
Yeah,
I
for
just
sure.
love that.
I was just having this conversation with one of the painters at that show in La Crosse. Um, he's a very literal painter in terms of I see this color, I mix it, I put it on the canvas.
Hmm.
And he was asking how to get more interesting color. And I said basically that, like
Yeah,
if you've got a big, especially in a big form where it's relatively flat, you don't want it to just be all the same color across the whole thing. So pick a couple of colors. I mean, it's a fun experiment to like on a scrap piece of canvas to see how far can you push those colors apart, in terms of complements or what, uh, while it still will hold together, visually.
sure.
But certainly, if you're playing in the grays, you can put almost any color in there as long as it's the right value.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I find
that'll.
that optical mixing to be very fun.
Mhm.
Like your eye has to do the work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's kind of crazy how, as long as it is the right value, it's going to read correctly.
Hmm.
Um, Certainly from 5, 10 feet back.
Sure. And that's the number one way to make mud in pastel, certainly, but I'm sure in oil as well,
Hmm.
is when you start to separate away from this being, from those things being the same value.
Hmm.
That's when you're starting to make mud.
Hmm.
Because once the white is integrated into the mix, it really can't be taken away. Certainly, so I also use a paper that is a pretty specific type of paper that can't get wet. It has a lifespan in that its tooth can only hold so much pastel. It's not one of these ones that you can keep like wiping it away and putting it
Hmm.
back and wiping it.
Hmm.
So if, like you said, you keep it nice and clean with the same value, then you don't run into that trouble of making mud. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm curious, because you have a very specific way about going about your painting, where it is very direct. Is that something that kind of came naturally right from the beginning, or is that like to to use this paper that you're talking about? Like it works because of the way you paint. Is that something you kind of stumbled into or found it along the way?
Um, well, this is funny. This is actually a plein air related story. When I did my first juried event, I was incredibly nervous and I painted this body of work and I was like, oh my God, I don't fit in with these people. At least the work, not the people.
Hmm.
And I remember being very kind of like, what was I thinking? I don't fit in here. And it was more abstract and it was more, I don't, it's weird. There's definitely, I've always loved the abstraction of it, but we've talked about this as far as like the impulse piece too. I think I like to get the gist of something and like soak it up and then I'm over it?
Hmm.
And so I think in the beginning, it's important to develop the skills to be able to do things that are more refined, certainly.
Hmm.
And then once you have done that, you can kind of apply your more, to me, like your personality to it. So when you
Hmm.
forgive yourself for the things you can't do or that you don't have an interest in,
Hmm.
you can take the things that you do well and choose to run with those instead and
Yeah.
not like wallow in the fact that, oh, I'm never going to be a realism painter. Well, I could be if I wanted to be.
Hmm.
Um, I just also don't want to see painting as a punishment for me personally.
Right.
And to me, that wouldn't, it would suck the fun out of it for me personally.
Hmm.
Everybody's different.
Hmm.
And so I guess where I was going with that, initially I did paint more realistically.
Hmm.
Um, Strictly from, you want to be accurate. You want
Hmm.
to be, have the skill set to be able to say, yes, I can do that, but I choose not to do that. And I think
Hmm.
that's different than not being able to do it. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, it's a weird thing where I think we all, most of us have this impulse to start with a fairly accurate representation of what we're seeing.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe it comes from when we're young and you're like, oh, I can draw a thing, and then you get praised for that, and you're like, oh, this is what I should be doing.
Right.
Um, or maybe just the way a more general audience perceives art. If it looks like a photo, then
Mhm.
it's the quality is better. Which is kind of a broad misunderstanding of what art is. But of course, we'll talk much more about that down the road, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So I guess where I was going with that in a long-winded way was
mhm,
that, yes, I started, I think, a little bit more tight and have loosened up over years of experience and the comfort of knowing that if I put a mark down and it's wrong,
mhm,
sometimes I'd rather it live in its wrong state.
mhm,
And I'm okay with that because I'm a
mhm,
human being and I make mistakes. And saying, that didn't quite hit the way I meant for it to hit. But at the same time, if I go back and try and alter that, I know I'm going to kill it. So
yeah.
it can live imperfectly or it can be beat to death in pursuit of perfection.
Mhm,
I don't personally feel the need to beat it to perfection. But
yeah.
that's me. Everybody's different about how they want to go about that.
Mhm. I think, yeah, along with that, well, we're balancing priorities. Do you want accuracy or do you want freshness?
Hmm.
Um, do you want spontaneity? Do you want imperfection, to reflect the imperfect world that we're seeing?
Hmm.
Um, Everything's a balancing act, and unless you can nail it perfectly on, from start to finish in a painting, which nobody has ever done,
Hmm.
uh, there's going to be a compromise somewhere. Um,
Yeah, and I feel like if things are too glossy and too sweet and you totally suck the humanity out of it, as far
mhm,
as like, I love work personally where I can, as a viewer or a collector, where I can see the human hand. Like, I
mhm,
want to see that.
mhm,
And so to me, if you've glazed and glossed and buffed and shined every little speck of a painting to the point where I don't see your humanity in it, like I don't see your hand,
mhm,
then I lose interest. But once again, that's just me.
mhm.
Um, Everybody's different as far as what appeals to them, but to me, I want to see that kind of rawness, like that hand, be it a flaw, be it perfection. I want to know the hand that made the thing because there's something really beautiful about that to me
Yeah,
personally as a viewer.
yeah. Mhm.
There's always
Uh,
that caveat, right? Because everybody's like different as far as what appeals to them. And there is
mhm.
no right or wrong. Everybody can participate.
Yeah, yeah, for
So
sure. There's no accounting for taste.
true.
Uh, that kind of leads me to uh, ask. So, I mean, we know kind of what we're going for in terms of painting, what we want. But what about a specific scene will first get your attention that will make you stop and say, I want to paint this?
I think that's the essential question to plein air,
Hmm.
personally. Finding that thing that makes you stop and
Hmm.
say, "Ooh, that's exciting to me." Like it could be a trash can. It could be,
Hmm.
I mean, I did a painting once of a tire and a knocked over spray paint can, and it was one of the most beautiful paintings ever. And I think, it's kind of like, I think you said this in the last episode. It's like if you want to do it, you're going to do it well,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Or at least do it to the best of your ability. But
Yeah.
if you aren't excited about it, to me, it's going to show on your painting.
Hmm.
So to me, I think finding anything, it doesn't necessarily matter content-wise what it is, just something that sparks that intellectual or mental question of like, ooh, this is exciting. Why? Like, how
Hmm.
can I share that and once again unpack it to
Hmm.
a viewer and explain, ooh, there was this thing. I'm so excited about it. I want to share it with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't
It's
know.
like, when you're a kid and you find a really cool rock and you just want to show it off
Yeah.
a little bit like that.
Yeah. It's like, why was this thing so exciting and what can I tell you about it?
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah. This conversation is always interesting to me because, like, one, I do want to unpack it and understand what makes us all tick, but then there's the other side of it, which is, what's the saying? Like, you don't dissect a bird to hear its song, or something like that,
Hmm.
or to understand its song. I don't know how that goes, but the gist being, um, is it fruitful to dissect it too much? Does that take away the magic of why any of this happens? Now, that said, I think it is important to interrogate it a little bit.
Yeah.
uh, but I don't know. For me, I've come from it from every angle. I think there when I was just starting out, and you're just learning how to render things, or you see a light effect that you've never painted before.
Mhm.
I'm like, ooh, what would that look like if I painted that? So there's that curiosity, just from a technical standpoint. Uh, and then I've probably done the cynical thing of, oh, this it's a nice sunset. I bet that painting will sell. So you do that. Um,
Yeah.
we've all done that. But uh, yeah, now I find it's much more scattershot, to be interesting. To be honest, it's I might see a composition that looks kind of cool.
Mhm.
It might be a texture that I've never painted before. Might just be some colors that look great together. Um, I think the through line for me these days is usually some sort of interesting drawing element, whether that's
Mhm.
a building or a boat or a gnarly tree or something. There's got to be some drawing involved. Um, and then something interesting happening with the light. Now I know every plein air painter is going to say something to that effect because it is all about the light. But uh, but it is, I mean, it's true. Like that's why one of the main reasons we go outside to paint is so we can experience and see the light first person.
Yeah. And I took an oil painting class with Derek Penix. Do you know his
Mm-hmm.
work? I
Hmm.
think that's how you say his last name.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was him, maybe I'm citing incorrectly, but said that there are light and shadow painters and there
Hmm.
are local tone painters.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you're one or the other. You're not going to be both because it's almost like putting a different hat on. If I'm in a
Sure.
local tone day, how I approach a painting is going to be wildly different than if I'm looking at light and shadow.
Hmm.
And I do think that there's some truth to that as far as seeing some of even the work that comes out of, you know, let's say you were at a plein air event and it rained all week
Hmm.
and all the paintings are gray and flat and kind of ugly.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my opinion, ugly. I should give that caveat. To me, I don't find that exciting. And I don't, and somebody said, well, Tara, you need to push yourself and you need to paint in the rain. Like you need to, I'm like, first of all, my pastels can't get wet. Second of
Hmm.
all, thanks for mansplaining to me what I need to paint. And third, if I don't like it, I'm not going to paint it well.
Hmm.
And if I don't paint it well, I'm not going to want to view it. And
Hmm.
to me, if I was going to buy a painting for my house, like I don't want to buy a painting of a ugly, rainy, flat day. Like that's
Hmm.
like boring.
Yeah.
Um, so it's funny to even hear, why people do the things they do in plein air.
Hmm.
You were saying the saleable piece of it.
Hmm.
Um, I try and let that influence me the least
Hmm. Yeah.
personally. Um, just because I like to bring my paintings home and keep them if I like them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
done events where I didn't even put in paintings that I didn't want to sell because I want to keep them. I just hid them in the car and didn't even put them in the show at all because I didn't want them to go home with anyone but myself. So,
Oh, I might have to start doing that. I
yeah. And I think it's more because it teaches you something. It's
Hmm.
like, I look at a painting like, oh, that was the time that I figured out this thing, or
Hmm.
I understood or had this epiphany about a specific topic or concept or composition or whatever.
Hmm.
And so I have literally just hid paintings in my car, like, no, you're never gonna, I'm, they won't see the light of day. They're just mine,
Yeah.
because I
I,
learned something from it.
yeah. I had a interesting experience not too long ago. I think I had just done a string of shows maybe over the course of a couple of months, and I thought I was doing some really great painting. But I was trying to put together a small body of work at the end of that, and the collective body that I had just was not that impressive. I'm like, what happened? And I was like, oh, all the good paintings sold, and I'm just left with the duds that came home from the shows. And
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, this is depressing. Uh, but yeah, had I stashed a couple of good ones away, I'd still have them. But
Yeah, and
uh,
I think too, it was funny. Two stories real quick.
mhm.
Sorry to like go on a tangent.
No, no, go ahead.
Um, I remember lamenting the fact that, we do these paintings, we do them fast, we frame them fast, we hang them fast, we sell them fast, and then it's gone. And
Mhm,
there's this element of loss, like, oh, I didn't quite get to live with that long enough to
mhm,
let it kind of resonate with me.
mhm.
And so there's that piece of plein air, and someone says, "Oh, what an elegant problem to have. You sold your painting." And it's like,
Yeah.
it's not that. It's, you appreciate that piece.
Hmm.
It's just you can't learn from it once it's gone, you know? And
Yeah.
there's sometimes it's like paintings that stay with you are the ones that kind of teach you over time.
Hmm.
And then two, this is a funny story. I was at a plein air event once, and there was this painting that I did that I really, really wanted to take home. And um, I didn't want to put it in the show, but I also knew that I had to put it in the show because I was actually like out west, and you know, I couldn't take it home with me, but I really
Hmm.
wanted to
Hmm.
take it. I would find a way.
Yeah.
And so I priced it twice the price of the other paintings that were the same size. And so
Hmm.
this couple walks up and they say, "Oh, why is this one twice as much as the others?" And I was like, "Because I want to take it home with me." I literally told them that.
Yeah.
And they were like, "We'll buy it. That's the one we want. We want the one that you want." I was like, "Damn it. Thank you. Damn it." Like, kind of back and forth. Like, that was awesome and sad. And awesome and sad.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a tough one. Actually, well, that kind of leads into just why don't we talk about plein air events just in general? Like, what are some of the strategies? You know, because I like it's interesting. Well, okay, first off, for people who don't know about plein air events,
Mhm.
they are essentially fundraisers for organizations, and we come in as the entertainment. That's in a very crude way of saying it. That's basically it.
Mhm.
Um, painters will come from around the region, the country, what have you. Usually between 20 and 40
Mhm.
artists, I would say is pretty standard. Probably on average 30. And we paint for a week around a given area. At the end of the week, then we have a show and a sale. There's usually awards. So they'll bring in a judge, and that's kind of it. Um, but yeah, what's when you go into a week, what does it look like for you?
We briefly discussed it earlier.
Mhm.
There's a lot of prep work, and it's
Mhm.
different for a pastelist, I think, than an oil painter in that we have to prepare all those frames with glass ahead of time.
Mhm.
And it's interesting just to get into really quick a little bit of the technical framing piece of it. Um, I have to put in a frame, a piece of glass with frame space, a piece of foam core, and then flexible points so that I can just unflex the points on the back, pop the foam core out, put the painting in, pop the foam core back in, and push the points back down.
Mhm.
Because even the jostling of points can
Mhm.
affect the pastel falling off the paper onto the glass,
Oh,
right? So
sure.
like it's kind of I've come up with this little system that works really well
Mhm.
for me. And even that took a long time to kind of figure out the best way to do that.
Mhm.
But I think real quick, going backwards, um, starting with applications. I mean, a lot of these things are juried, what, a year in advance or 6 to 8 months in advance,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
you have to have a body of work to present to them. So you have to kind of build up that portfolio before you get there, even
Hmm.
to be able to apply for that. Um,
Yeah. So like when you first started applying to like Western shows, for instance, uh, did you have Western paintings to apply with, or you just had stuff that was like, that could be vaguely
mm.
Westernish?
No, my first Western show was Sonoma Plein Air.
Hmm.
And no, I don't even remember what I juried in with, honestly.
Hmm.
And I remember getting there and just being so enamored with that landscape because it was so foreign to
Mm.
me
Hmm.
from a Maryland perspective. And out toward like Petaluma, where it's almost like these huge mountains that have like their tops chopped off and they look like these bulbous hills of like, I just was so fascinated by that because it was something I had never seen. And yeah, it was just really beautiful. I didn't have any work that necessarily catered to that specific landscape.
Hmm.
Um, but I think, if you have, I don't want to say like generic landscapes, but if you have a strong body of work that shows a range of subjects, I
Hmm.
think that that's sufficient. I don't think you have to have like a painting of a boat to get into play to Cape Ann or,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah.
Probably depends. I mean, I've never juried a show like that, but I like to think I would just pick the best painters,
Mhm.
regardless of what they were submitting, you know?
Yeah. And I do think that people will sometimes submit things and you're kind of like, why would you pick that thing to
Yeah.
submit,
Yeah.
So I do think that if you've never done an event before, it doesn't hurt to find a couple fellow painters and be like, hey, send them 10 paintings. Which of these five do you think are the strongest ones that,
Hmm.
you like the most?
Hmm.
Um, and that might help you kind of determine what you want to put in. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that a lot, trying to get that because usually you can submit, between 3 and 5 paintings for an application. And yeah, it's good to show, well, certainly whatever you're doing, present yourself in the best light possible.
Mhm.
Start there. But it can be hard to know what that looks like. So getting outside feedback, but at the end of the day, you kind of have to go with your gut too,
Sure.
Um, so I'll ask my wife or other painters, and most of the time, what I really want them to do is to just reflect my taste back to me, so that pick the paintings that I like. Um,
Well, at least you're honest with yourself. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. And there have been situations where uh, if I'm totally outvoted, then I'll go along. But
Mhm.
that can be tough, especially if it doesn't work out. But then you've got someone to blame. So, you know.
Sure. That's true.
Uh, so yeah, so you apply to a show, make sure it's well, where do we find these shows? I mean, there's a lot of them are listed online. I know Plein Air Magazine
Yeah.
puts together a good listing of a lot of shows.
Hmm.
Um, I know there's was it there were a few websites that had.
Yeah, I think online juried shows has
Mhm.
some. I think juried art services
Mhm.
has some.
Yeah.
Trying to think of
Uh,
who else.
oh, call for artists. Is that still?
I think it's call-
It's like cafe.com or
yeah, I
something
think
like
it's
that.
call for entry, maybe.
Call for
Maybe
entry. That
it's
might be it.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, any of those places are good. Or if you have a specific plein air event that you like, obviously you can just Google it. Or if you have artists that you admire and you're like, where are they painting? I want to know what their schedule looks like. You can look
mhm.
on there and do that whole steal like an artist thing and,
Mhm.
figure out what's on their schedule and just be like, oh, how do I get into that?
Mhm.
If anybody out there is listening, which I'm sure they're not. I want to do Zion in the Grand Canyon so bad, but I keep asking, like, how do you get invited to that? And they never really answer me. So if you're out there, I want in. That would be worth the travel time to me. But
For sure.
yeah,
Zion, especially, I just drove through there last fall,
I want it
and
so
I'm like,
bad.
yeah, I want to go back. Um, oh, what was I? I was just going to say something about applications. Now I'm forgetting.
You were talking about call for
Call
entry.
for entry. I don't know. It'll come to me. Um, so once we've applied to shows, then what I was going to say. So it's like that first show. That's the hard one. So you just need to like get the ball rolling. I mean, even if it's not a juried show, do like I started out doing the open shows. So all you have to do is
Yeah,
apply.
absolutely.
And
Because they all, almost all the events have a quick draw.
mhm,
So, and most of the time the community is open and invited to that. And that
mhm.
definitely was like a way that I got my foot in the door. I forgot
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. Uh,
Um,
and then once you're there, all the other painters, presumably it's not all of them their first time. So uh,
mm.
ask as many questions as you can, because I don't know, artists are friendly people and they like to share. Um,
I think so. And it's funny because some of the first ones that I did were just quick draws, just
mhm,
the 2 hour limit, show
mhm,
up, try and sell it, move on.
mhm,
And um, they had a they typically have a community open paint out area and then a professional area. And I remember I went to one of the community ones and I thought, I'm gonna be one of you juried people one day. Like that was my goal.
mhm,
I was gonna be on that side of the aisle, not this side. Like I'm gonna be with you. So yeah, it definitely I think helps even build that portfolio that you need to apply,
mhm,
your confidence and comfort, the how comfortable you are with having people stand around you and talk to you while you're painting and interrupt you every 4 seconds, and
mhm,
having people look at you and watch you. And I think everybody knows that there's this point where like your painting's gonna be kind of ugly because
mhm.
you're getting there. You have to
Yeah.
kind of let it hit its ugly middle school phase.
Mhm,
And so I think you have to learn how to be okay with people seeing it in that state too.
mhm.
Because sometimes you're like, please don't look. Come back in 15 minutes. I promise it will be better. Just leave me alone for a couple minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It's that first 15% feels great because it shows so much promise. You're just getting
mhm.
some interesting color down. There's some basic composition. But then yeah, that middle 60 to 70%, where it's just trash. You're
Yeah,
like, no, I'm good at this, I promise. But yeah,
come back.
come back later.
Yeah. So I think the quick draws are good to get the experience to be
Mhm.
comfortable with those things too,
Yeah.
because I think that's important.
Yeah. It's yeah, definitely getting, and it's a good place to do your first bad paintings because your paintings are probably going to be bad. You know what I mean? Like, but to learn to be okay with that, you know,
Yeah.
um, because when we're outside, well, first off, let's baseline painting is hard, just in general. And then to do it outside, you're dealing with the elements with people asking, uh, let's be charitable and say interesting questions. And or you're dealing with bugs or rain or all the things. So now you've got that going on. And then if you're doing a quick paint, oh, by the way, you have 2 hours to do it.
Hmm.
Uh, it's unlikely that you're going to be 100% satisfied with your painting. And if you
Hmm.
are, fantastic, but raise your bar a little bit. um,
Raise your bar.
but
That's funny.
yeah, just a lot of the art world is dealing with failure or rejection or all those things. So you kind of grow accustomed to it and realize that's not really the point, or the point isn't to win an award, or I mean, making a sale is good, but it only facilitates the next painting. you know.
Absolutely. And I think that brings to mind, to me personally, this concept of affirmation
Hmm.
and whether you're allowing other people to give it to you or if
Hmm.
you're giving it to yourself. And
Yeah.
I think so many people get tied up with, we talked last time about process versus product.
Hmm.
To me, it's the same thing of, that internal affirmation versus external affirmation as far as giving me an award for a painting and telling me I did something really well.
Hmm.
If I know that I didn't do my best, it means absolutely nothing to me. I mean, it
Hmm.
means nothing to me regardless, which sounds weird and cocky or I have no idea what, but I don't care if anybody else tells me a painting is good or not good. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like I'm the judge of whether I feel like I did the best that I can do.
Hmm.
And so to me, that's one of the things that I absolutely hate about the plein air circuit,
Hmm.
so to speak, um, is this idea that art is somehow a measurable thing that you
Hmm.
can award
Yeah.
or reward, or you can't say that one thing's better than the other when you have no measuring stick to make that assessment. And it's
Right.
not
Right.
this like what was it called in philosophy? Relativism, where, everything's relative to everything and there is
Hmm.
no anything. It's not that. It's just that people just tie so much of their self-worth up in these stupid awards, and I'm like, it means nothing.
Hmm.
Literally, money is always wonderful. If you want to hand me a check for $5,000 or $1,000 or whatever,
Hmm.
great, I'll take it. But I hesitate to tell people to think that that their worth or the work that they're doing, the worth of that is tied up in someone telling them they did a good job.
Yeah.
To me, that's very icky. And so
Hmm.
many people are susceptible to the kind of demon of that.
Hmm.
Like, who cares? Not to be mean.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's 100% true. And I think so. It's not just you personally, how you interact with that, but it's
Hmm.
also telling everyone else this painting that won, that's the best painting. And this is what painting should be. And I like to think most of us are aware of that as a concept, and
Hmm.
we either buy into it a little bit or not at all, or maybe a lot. Um, but it's I think that that can be a big problem, or has been a problem with a lot of plein air events. Where so there's events where they get a different judge every year,
Hmm.
and sometimes they make choices that I would not make.
Hmm.
I'm still happy that that is the case because
Hmm.
the idea of say just pure representational photorealistic or whatever type of plein air painting, that is not the end all be all. Let's get uh some Terra Wills in there. Let's get some more abstract pieces in there, because it's not so much about what is the best representation of the landscape. It's what is the best piece of art, which again, we're ascribing value to it in a somewhat arbitrary way. But if you if you put too much of a premium on those awards, whether you're a viewer, a collector, or one of the participating artists, um, it's just not a good way to do it, you know.
Mm. No, and I think too many people, once again, when we talk about, to me, it's like the difference between process versus product, right?
Mhm.
You were talking
Mhm.
about painting paintings that were saleable.
Mhm.
That is putting, to me, in my opinion, the product over the process.
Mhm.
Like you've kind of stepped away from taking the process, which I think should be the essential part of the painting, and you've given some of that energy and interest to the product.
Mhm.
To me, the awards are the same thing where I just feel like I don't know. I see so many people that are tied up in the award piece.
Hmm.
Like I did get an award, I didn't get an award. And I'm kind of like, who cares? And maybe that's because I've gotten awards and I'm I'm grateful for awards. I don't want to sound like
Hmm.
a total snot, but I'm just saying like if I went to a show and I performed really well and I didn't get an award,
Hmm.
I would still be happy. I
Hmm.
would still say I performed my best. I love what I did. Hopefully it resonates with someone.
Hmm.
That's it.
Hmm.
I wouldn't ever look at someone else getting an award and be like, well, I should have gotten that, or they didn't deserve that, or anything like that. I'm like, who cares? I don't get it at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. I think so my experience, if I'm being honest about it, when I first started, or when I started to win some awards, especially at the smaller shows, uh, you start to get some attention, and that's very attractive. Uh, and you're like, yeah, it does, well, in the same way that a sale or making money doing art, it is a manifestation of you getting better in some respects. So, like, if you can sell work, and I mean, it's not a pure one-to-one, like you're painting, if your paintings are good, they sell. That's not necessarily the case. But um, if you're doing it consistently, uh, it can, there's a correlation between the quality of the work going up and, um, you know, sales and awards to some respect.
Hmm.
Now, we could, parse that apart a little bit more if we wanted to. But I guess the idea I'm getting at is that it was all very attractive to me when I started.
Hmm.
Um, because, I was green, naive, didn't know what I was doing. So to get some of that positive affirmation, like, hey, you're going in the right direction, keep doing this. But the problem is if you go down that road solely for those reasons, it's just like you said, you're putting the product over the process. The other side of that is that the day after you win an award, it feels very hollow. It feels great that night, but
That's
the very
funny.
next day, you're like, oh, well, that feeling's gone now. What do I do? Whereas if you do a really good painting, I only feel more excited the next day, where I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, I want to do that again. And you
Right.
can. You don't have to wait for the next show to hopefully win an award. You can just get back to the studio or get outside and do some more work.
Right. And that brings us to the point too, where I think a lot of this during, not all of it, but some of it, is who can paint the best studio painting outside.
Oh, yeah.
And so to me, there's a very big difference between um, catching the essence of a space and time.
Hmm.
That to me, that's what plein is.
Hmm.
Like you go out and you're surrounded by an environment and you try and reflect that
Hmm.
in whatever level of specificity you prefer. Um, but to me, when you lose that because it's so, once again, kind of, I feel like this sounds weird. The thing about realism that bothers me is I feel like I'm being tricked or like I'm being lied to.
Hmm.
Like I want that rawness and that spontaneity, and everybody's different in what they want. But
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of times the things that are deemed worthy are things that are, you know, um, I don't want to say overworked, but just like so much information that you're just kind of like, okay, you told me everything to know about this. Like
Hmm.
I didn't get to play at all, Like I
Yeah.
didn't get to
Yeah.
infuse anything in it because it
Hmm.
was all dictated to me.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah.
It's like the saying about writing, show me, don't tell me, you
Hmm.
know? Like when it's all spelled out, what does the viewer have to bring to the experience?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, we all have different objectives when we're going outside to paint or creating work more generally. Um, but yeah, I think it always has to come back to process. What's the process that interests you, or what do you have to say, and what's the best way to convey that? You know,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, the idea of doing a studio painting outside, I'm not going to stop anyone from, working on the same painting for 5 days in a row.
Hmm.
Um, I don't want to do that. Like, I think I've done 3 sessions on a painting before,
Hmm.
maybe. Otherwise, two tops. Usually it's one shot, and that's not to necessarily take anything away from people who want to do that. I don't care. Do your thing. Uh, but yeah, while there's a difference between you and I in terms of how we approach the work, I am a little ADD in the way that you are, in that as soon as I get that one painting, I'm 4 hours into it and I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. I want to move on, you
Hmm.
know. Um, and so the
And
idea,
I don't think I've ever touched a plein air painting after
mhm,
leaving the site.
mhm,
Never. You know what? There was one time, and it was because I did like 12 windows on some little house, and I
mhm.
completely forgot to fill in a whole square of window. And I went back and like touched that little spot up. But like
Mhm,
to me, that time has passed. Moving on, it is what it is. It lives in that state that it was
mhm.
when I left there. I
Yeah,
never ever touched a painting once I'm done with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I will, certainly for a plein air show, um, tighten things up. And it's usually, if I'm getting a lot more information in that painting, I don't have the time to do the editing on the fly. So it's never anything major. It's just softening edges or tweaking some values,
Hmm.
just to really polish it up a little bit. Because, those things can kind of get stuck in your craw, once you notice them, if something's not quite right. And
Hmm.
I guess for me, maybe as an oil painter, it's a little easier to make those edits. Um, Whereas your work is, because it's very gestural and bold, it's probably harder to do like fine tuning. Uh,
Hmm.
like, you almost have to do those all in one shot where you have that energy going.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's harder than people think to put a mark down and not touch it again.
Hmm.
Like a lot of people, I think, want to put it down and then pet it.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think Peggy Kroll Roberts said that. We're not petting our paintings here. We're painting. But they put a mark down and then like almost void it, and then put a
Hmm.
mark down and then almost void it. And it's like, well, why'd you put it there if you're just gonna take it away, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's interesting.
Hmm. Um, and that can be, well, one problem I have with like more photorealistic work is quite often not a single brushstroke has any impact. It's like the collection of all of them.
Hmm.
Um, where certainly with your work, you put a mark down and that mark is doing a lot of work, you know. Um, and there's something very appealing about that. That in and of itself is almost a magic trick. It's not so much in it's tricking the viewer. It's look how much this one mark can hold up this whole section of a painting.
Hmm.
Um, and without that, some consideration for that, I think a painting loses a ton of life. Um, so yeah, it's just less interesting to do a fully polished studio painting outside.
Yes, if you can, I would encourage you to just get the gist of it. But
And
that's
I
just what I like, so.
and it kind of gets back to like why are we even painting outside to begin with? I will say it's much easier for me to get distracted in the studio, so I have considered doing bigger paintings outside
Hmm.
for that reason, but it has nothing to do with when we do it, or when studio paintings done outside are done for a plein air show. It's specifically for winning an award. I feel like
Hmm.
most of the time,
Yeah.
because look how impressive this piece is. Give me a
Hmm.
ribbon now, please. Um, and again, if you want to do that, by all means. But uh, and I will admit I've done that. Maybe not the 5 days on a single painting, but
Hmm.
try and do a big impressive painting, uh, just to kind of show off and say, look how good I am. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's again like what are we doing at the end of the day? Why is that good? Why is it good to do that? Uh, and that is a question between you and the judge, I guess.
Well, and
You
I
know.
think too, when you paint larger, I feel like it opens your whole body as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
Um, and I tell students this, it's like if your paper's smaller, you just like shrink in, right? Like you
Hmm.
have to get closer to it. You moving your hand, not your arm. Like
Hmm.
there's just a difference. So I think painting larger outside, there is, I know I'm just saying because you said you had an interest in it.
Hmm.
There's It's just it strikes different when
Hmm.
you're doing it that way, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it definitely, yeah, like you said, you're using your whole arm, not just a little wrist movement for your mark making. Um, and bigger pieces like your paintings, when they're large, they have a very different presence on the wall, compared to if you were to do a little 6 by 6.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, that's the same for everybody, but it's going to change how you render form. It's going to change how much information you can put in there. Maybe you
Hmm.
can, like, I'll go larger when I want to tackle a more complex scene, just because it's easier to get all that extra information, like all the drawing stuff, all that. Um, and each section of the painting can therefore have more visual interest. Whereas if it's a little 6 by 6, it's kind of tough to pack all that in there.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess the thing I feel like we're kind of dancing around is what is the point of all this? Why do we go outside?
I think it's the quickest way to learn to see
Hmm.
personally. You talk about you value, certainly light and shadow, certainly reflected color,
Hmm.
reflected light, all of the things that you should be thinking about when painted from life is much more honest than a photo reference could ever be. Because your eyeball is so much more sophisticated than a camera.
Hmm.
It's going to catch little nuances that a camera is going to flatten out or force a certain angle or force a certain color. Like I find on my iPhone, for some reason, like it doesn't do well with like reds.
Hmm.
I find that if I want to get a picture more accurate, I have to go in and add some red to it. Like it could just be like a deficiency in my actual physical phone. But those kind of things that you're going to see and pick up in person, that a camera can't give you that information,
Hmm.
but your eyeball can because it's seeing and doing a lot more than a camera is.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, cameras are great, but yeah, if you want to learn how to uh, not match color, but to use color in a somewhat natural, authentic way, um, you kind of have to work from life,
Yeah, I
or at
agree.
least I do. I mean, and I that continues to be true. Now by now I've got a good sense of what happens with light and how light affects color. Uh, but going outside and painting is like a constant refresher course, or it's like going to the gym where it just keeps your muscles from atrophying too much, you know.
Yeah. I can't say I relate, but to the going to the gym part.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, another thing for me, and I don't know if you experience this, if I'm just going out and taking photos, because it's so easy to just click a button and move on.
Hmm.
I find I make terrible compositional choices when I'm taking photos. Whereas if I'm setting up for a painting, I stop and think about the best vantage point a lot
Hmm.
longer, and I just end up with better compositions or more interesting compositions. Do you experience that at all?
I I really love working from photo reference too. I've done that quite a bit in recent years. And I had a person, a fellow artist that I was kind of mentoring for a while, and they were struggling with the composition piece, and they said, what can I do to improve? And I said, take 10, 20 reference photos of things that you took pictures of and crop them to make them better and put them
Mm-hmm.
side by side and say, like, how can I make this a stronger composition? What could I do cropping wise?
Hmm.
And so I feel like even if that photo information that you took wasn't perfect,
Hmm.
I feel like the afterwards you have a lot of variety as far as what you can do to alter it to make it what you want it. Not that I do it all that often, but
Hmm.
I remember when I first started painting in general, I just put tons of information in the foreground, like tons of space, that physical space dedicated to a painting, to things that weren't important. Like, let's say it's like a big road.
Hmm.
Like, I don't want a big gray blob on the front of my painting. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so I started to say, I'm not going to do that again. Self, you don't do that.
Yeah.
Um, so I think some of those compositional things, even when you're out in the field and looking for them, it's good to kind of, you have to have that collection of body of work to see your tendencies, to
Hmm.
know what to avoid doing or to know how to improve what you're doing.
Hmm.
So if you don't have a collection of work a body of work that you can look at and say, oh, I tend to do this. I need to fix that, or I need to make sure that I'm not doing that. You can't make that connection because you don't have that content to examine, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think compositional things, um, over time, I just feel like you start to get more comfortable with it.
Sure.
And like there's tangents and stuff, and I'll find myself still doing tangenty things, and I'm like, that was stupid. Like, move that over. But I also think that a reference is just that. It's a reference. It's
Yeah.
not the Bible. I always tell my students, there's no reference police. Nobody's gonna
Hmm.
come count the leaves on your tree or count the rocks on the ground or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, it's just giving you information, and you get to dictate what you're going to share with the viewer. You're not beholden to all of the information, but
Right.
yeah.
Do you find it easier to make some of those decisions when you're working from a photo or from when you're outside? Or is there a difference?
I feel like it's a little harder outside just because there's so much information.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you ever started a painting and you had this very strict idea in your head and it kind of like grows and like gets out of hand? Like, let's say you wanted to zoom in on a specific area of a landscape.
Hmm.
And then you like look to your right and there's like, oh, but there's light on that tree. And it's like, well, maybe I'll put that in there. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of like grows and grows and then snowballs into this thing. And it's like, that's not what I meant, you know?
yeah.
Um,
That's when I know I'm in trouble, is if I'm really getting lost in a part of the painting that just does not matter.
mhm.
Like I'll be having fun with it, um, but I'm either rendering the crap out of it or just adding too much nuance that in essence is going to start distracting from a focal point or the main thing, like the main reason, whatever it is that made you stop and say, I want to paint this. But then you
Right.
start having too much fun in the periphery. It's like, well, now I have to compensate even more in the focal point. I
Right.
will have that. My experience is kind of the opposite of yours, actually. I can do way more. I feel way more free to edit when I'm painting on location. So, taking trees out, moving trees around, or, all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas when I'm working from a photo, I mean, I will do that too. It's just, because there isn't that pressure or the immediacy of, the time limit. Uh,
Hmm.
I, I'm less, uh, like cutthroat about it. Whereas if I'm outside, it's shoot from the hip. I'm getting this done now.
Right.
Uh,
Making that decision, just being a decision maker is
yeah.
probably easier on site.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, God, what else we got? We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have. I thought this was a pretty good one.
Um,
So event-wise, I guess, are there any other things that we haven't really explained as far as so to enter the events, you need a body of work that you apply with a specific number of paintings that are dictated to you by the event.
mhm,
Typically running, I don't know, 6 months to a year prior to the event, I would
mhm,
say.
mhm.
What about invitationals? Have you ever just like reached out to an invitational, be like, I want to be there. Like, let me know.
I haven't. Um, I know some, so like Door County, for instance, I think they have a thing on their website that says if you want to be considered, please reach out to us at such and such a time. Um, but yeah, the other invitationals that I've been invited to, they've just reached out. So I don't know what's you said you've reached out to Zion.
I do every once in a blue moon, I'll just find something that seems insurmountable or not going to happen for me. And
Hmm.
I just try and throw it out there in the universe, like, yeah, I want to join you. Kind of
Hmm.
like me saying that I want the Zion one or
Hmm.
um
Zion, if you're listening.
Zion, Zion. Um, yeah, so I think if you have an interest in a specific event and it is invitational,
Hmm.
either find a friend who is in it
Hmm.
and be like, "Hey, are you willing to throw my name in the ring for being in that event?"
Hmm.
And I've done that for a lot of my friends. And I love to see them succeed in these events too. I
Hmm.
recommended someone and they won the whole damn thing, and I was like, woohoo! I was just so excited about it, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's always fun to see your peers succeed and do well at these things. So I always
Hmm.
love that piece of
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, one thing we haven't talked about specifically with the events is how are we how are you engaging with events these days? How has that changed over the years?
I'm not. Um, I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna get like canceled here. Um, I feel like I don't love the way that events are going in that a lot of the work to me is very homogenous.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm seeing a lot of the same things repeated. I am seeing people who are like we were talking about more interested in a saleable painting than the process of painting.
Hmm.
And you get to the point you're like, well, is that really where I want my name? Like, is that
Hmm.
really where I want to be in as an artist? And for me, the answer is no. I mean, I've always said I will ride the plein air wave until the wave dries up and slows down.
Hmm.
And I feel like I did that, and it's offered me great opportunity, certainly. Um, but I just lost my lust for it.
Hmm.
I don't know. How are you feeling about events?
Well, similar. You so a lot of these events, have been going on for 20 years, and if it's 20 years of paintings in a relatively small area, most of everything has been painted at least 5 times.
Hmm.
Um, Now that does offer a nice challenge in how do you capture it in a unique way, but only if you're considering that. If you're not just showing up and being like, I'm gonna paint some saleable paintings and hopefully win an award and blah blah blah, all the stuff we just talked about. Um, so yeah, a lot of it has lost its novelty for me. But like you said, it's a great experience. I mean, I've met a ton of great artists, a lot of my friends. Uh, I've met through plein air shows. But yeah, there's a limit to what you can get out of it, I think. And not that it's all about what can I get out of it. It's an experiential thing, but artistically, how much can you grow within the confines of a 5-day painting event? where you have to produce 10 paintings. You have to show up for the quick paint. You got to go out to these assigned locations,
Hmm.
all this, blah, blah, blah. So that's more where I've started to fall away from it is the constraints of the events themselves. Where, yeah, I feel like I just can't grow much more than what I've already done. Now, that might seem a little close-minded, but also, I don't know, we've been doing this for 10 years now, so
Hmm.
I think we've got a leg to stand on.
Yeah, and I think that you outgrow stuff. I
Hmm.
mean, I think that's a good thing. I think if you're continuing to do the same thing for 20 some years or more,
Hmm.
um, as an artist specifically, um, I don't see necessarily like a growth component to that. If
Hmm.
you're just repeating play, rewind, repeat, rewind, repeat. Like to me, there's something, I don't know, it's a little stagnant
Hmm.
to just constantly do the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
Which I
Yeah.
think is what has also pushed me into wanting to do more things in the studio because I want to know how to do everything.
Hmm.
Literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love all of it. And
Hmm.
so I think there's something really fun about not knowing how to do something
Hmm.
and figuring it out. Like the figuring out is kind of like a little treasure hunt, you know? It's like, ooh, what can I
Hmm.
find here? Like,
Yeah.
how can
Yeah.
this apply to me? Um, so yeah, I think yeah, and then you see kind of this is I'm canceling myself for sure. Um, but the same names at the same events and the same like year after year after year, and you're thinking, I've been there to that event for 2 or 3, 4 years.
Hmm.
I'm just like, what more is there to say about a place?
Hmm.
Like, I don't know. I start to get a little bored.
Yeah. No, I definitely get that. Um, I mean, there's a number of shows that I've done for multiple years, and my motivation, honestly, is not because I have something new to say. A lot of the times, it's like I'll be, well, I won't go into specifics, but uh, yeah, and it's a weird thing, and yeah, to your point of not wanting to do this for 20 years, like I love doing the events in a lot of ways because it's because of the camaraderie. We get to hang out with our friends.
Hmm.
Um, they are good sales opportunities. That's a fact of, being an artist we have to contend with at some point.
Sure.
Um, but because it's kind of wrapped up in this gimmicky package,
Hmm.
uh, it's, there's a limit to how much of that you should, I think, engage with. Um, and so I've been cutting back on the number of shows I've been doing for the last, well, several years, and I think next year I'm only going to do two, maybe,
Hmm.
um, which I think will be plenty. I can get out of the studio. I can go see some people, some friends,
Hmm.
um, but it's not, because when you're doing the circuit, you're also on the road a ton, and like you've got your kids. Um, I've got, well, a wife who doesn't miss me all that much. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm
Um,
sure she does.
she's happy to get me out of the house once in a while, but if I'm gone for, too long, that's tough. It's a hard
Hmm.
way to make a living. Um, so once you're presented with the opportunity to scale that back, which I've been fortunate enough that I've been in that situation now, uh, it's it's preferable to go out on my terms and do the shows that I want to do.
Yeah.
Um,
And you get to be more selective about even locale. Like
mhm.
there are places that I'm like, that is an ugly place. I've been there. I don't care to paint it. I don't
Mhm.
think it's pretty. I don't understand why anybody else goes there. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and so to be able to kind of dictate that a little bit is nice to have that freedom
Mhm.
to do that.
Yeah.
Um, I
You know
will
what
also
I've,
go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you're
Well,
good.
uh, just this last year, Okay, so there have been a number of shows where I really loved painting there, but the sales were really bad. So it's
Mhm.
hard from a business standpoint to justify going back. And it's occurred to me, well, why not just get a few painters together and just go there and paint? If you're not going to get sales, we could just go and like have a good time. And so I this last year a couple of times I've gone out painting, like made trips with a few other painters, and it's been so much more enjoyable than doing plein air events.
Mhm.
Um, where yeah, you're not necessarily paying for your trip that week, but those paintings you bring home, you can send those off to a gallery, or they make great studies for studio work or whatever. It's just it kind of changes your relationship with uh, plein air painting more generally. You know.
Yeah, and real quick before I
Mhm.
forget the thought, because it will literally leave my brain, collectors.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, but plein air brings it when it comes to collectors. They
Oh yeah.
have a very engaged collector base
Hmm.
typically. And those are people that we quite frankly would not have access to.
Hmm.
So when you're kind of like, what the heck? Why are you taking 40%, 50% of my money?
Hmm.
Aside from keeping the lights on and feeding you and housing you and all the things that they're doing, bringing that collector base is huge. Um, and so to me, to have exposure with those collectors is worth every penny.
Hmm.
Um, I won't say who it was, but I did a painting at an event, and a pretty prominent person came up to it and was like having a conversation with someone else. I was probably 20 feet behind him or something.
Hmm.
And so I could see them looking at the painting, and it was a big painting, and they're in front of the painting and they're like going like, ooh, like that, like, look at the movement. Like you could see the body motions. And somebody came up to me and they were like, I want someone to do that in front of my painting. Like, but it was like a person that I would never in a million years think I would get to meet or
Hmm.
know, and, respecting what they've done in their own personal career is pretty impressive. And so it's neat to have the exposure to the variety of collectors that a lot of these events can pull.
Yeah.
They're not everyday collectors, and they're
Hmm.
not people that we would typically get exposed to.
Hmm.
So I'm very grateful for that. And the hosts, we didn't even touch on that, but
Oh yeah.
typically we have a host, and the host will very graciously um, and let you into their home and treat you. I think usually I was like their kids' age typically.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so they'd be like spoiling me, and it was wonderful and lovely,
Yeah.
and they're always very kind. And so
Hmm.
um, I've had, maybe one or two like slightly uncomfortable experiences. And
Hmm.
other than that, they've been great as well. So it's like you're exposed to like these wonderful people, not only the painters, but the people who organize the events, the collectors, the um, all the hosts. They're just a wonderful group of people.
Hmm.
I think plein air people are kind of like the salt of the earth kind of people. It's like we have to
Hmm.
learn to live on the fly and deal with whatever we get. And so sometimes we're hungry and cold, and sometimes it rains, and sometimes we don't have the shoes that we wanted, or the paint color that we wanted, or
Yeah.
the whatever.
Hmm.
But we learn to make it work. And
Hmm.
so I think that that's a really good kind of person to be,
Yeah.
personally.
There's a level of scrappiness there, and what would you say? Being somewhat level-headed, I guess, adaptable.
Yeah, very
Uh,
adaptable. Some
but
people don't deal well with change.
yeah, you
Yeah.
did. So you raise a good point. I feel like we did just complain about events for a little bit. They are fantastic, and they're often, most of the time, the organizations that put them on are really worthwhile organizations. Wonderful people, tons of very hardworking volunteers that don't
Hmm.
get a lot of credit. Um, and yeah, just the you know what it is. So if there was an event that was completely organized by artists, I feel like it would be terrible.
I feel like it'd be a hot mess. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and even all the gimmicky stuff that we tend to have to do with plein air events like quick paints and going out to assigned locations, while we all kind of grumble about that, that's what gets collectors out. You know,
Mhm.
there's a certain level of showmanship that's necessary for the events to be successful. Because in order to be successful, they need sales. And while we want to kind of divorce ourselves from that, at least when we're in the process of painting, uh, it is again a fact of the reality of how this all works. Without sales, we don't get to do this.
Sure.
Um, so the organizations that put them on, they work very hard in order to facilitate sales and let us do our job, which is hopefully create beautiful artwork.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, it's
Yeah, and I don't want to rain on the plein air parade or anything because I
mhm,
do think there's a lot of value. I get concerned when people are so tied up in the validation piece.
mhm,
Um, so I would say get some internal affirmation in there. Like
yeah, yeah,
be proud of the work you're doing. Work hard.
mhm,
And I think to me that's the most important part of it. But
mhm, for
yeah.
sure. Um, yeah, it's these complaints that we did have, they are very specific and not a we're not casting a pall on all of the plein air
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think, when we talk about us being kind of salt of the earth, well, I said that, but
Mhm,
people that are kind of down to earth and realistic and, living out of your car is not fun. And I think at the same time, artists in general have to have a thicker skin because we are criticized all the time.
mhm,
And anybody can criticize you. It could be a little 4-year-old who
mhm,
just learn to say fun words. Or it could be an adult who said, I could do that. It's like, well, please show me. I would love to see it.
mhm.
I've been told I draw worse than a monkey. I've been told I'm not an artist. I've been told I'm terrible. I've been told that all I do is scribble. I've been told, so
Mhm,
I think it comes down to that when I talk about that self-affirmation, I'm talking about being proud of the work you're doing, loving the work you're doing,
mhm,
um, and believing that you're doing it to the best of your ability, in a way that you're proud of it. And
mhm,
so to me, that's why I'm like, awards don't really matter to me because you can say nice words to me, you can say mean words to me. I get to choose what I'm going to absorb, right? And
mhm,
so I think because we hear so many nice words and so many mean words, they kind of start to mean nothing to
mhm.
me. And
Yeah,
so ultimately it comes down to, well, do I think that I did that well? And
yeah,
I just wish more people would be empowered by um, understanding that other people's words do not dictate the value of your work.
right.
You do.
Mhm,
And, you know, if I did work I was proud of my whole life and stuffed it in drawers and nobody saw it until I was dead, I'd be like, I did what I wanted to do.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, sorry, that was a little soapboxy.
No, I think that kind of gets. I know down the road we're going to talk about this a lot more and like kind of get into the
Yeah.
how do we define quality in painting and what are our motivations and all that. Uh, but I think that stuff can get obscured so easily in the plein air world that or in the competitions and all that. And it's not
Mhm.
just plein air. I mean, there's juried gallery shows and stuff like that where
Yeah.
you're dealing with a lot of the same things. Um, yeah, it's good to keep all that in mind. That I don't know. For me, like I said before, winning an award is great. The cash is awesome, but the next day the cash is gone and the award is
You
nobody
spend that
nobody
cash
cares.
fast, Mark.
Ah, paints are expensive.
I know, right? It's funny. Yeah. I think it kind of gives you that false sense of what I'm hearing you say is like this
Hmm.
high. And then when
Hmm.
you don't get that affirmation, you're kind of like,
Yeah,
oh, what am I doing wrong?
yeah.
Once again, that's
Hmm.
another reason why not to allow that to necessarily affect the um, current of your work. You
Hmm.
kind of have to push forward and do what feels right for
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
But
It's interesting. There actually are, so there are those types of highs, but with painting, we have these, highs when you really knock a painting out of the park and you're like,
Mhm.
yeah. Um, but then you definitely feel the lows as well when things aren't going well and you don't know how to progress or how to get out of that slump.
Yeah,
Um,
all the
so
feels.
yeah, it's not like when you're just painting for the pure love of it, that's all roses. Uh,
No, yeah.
but if it's a more substantial, like worthwhile endeavor, I think, rather than chasing this thing that one, you don't have any control of,
Mhm.
and two is it's just not that big of a deal to like we build it up in our heads that like at a plein air reception when they're handing out the awards, we're all super psyched for whoever won, and that's
Mhm.
great. But outside of that little 3 hour reception, nobody cares. I mean, people do care, but it's you know what I mean. Like it's a much smaller thing than what we make it out to be in that moment. You
And
know.
if I had the choice between producing during the week a body of work that I was proud of,
Hmm.
or producing a body of work that got an award,
Hmm.
I would pick I was proud of 1,000% of the time.
Hmm.
Because to me, the that's that process over product thing. It's almost like the
Hmm.
award is a product,
Hmm.
and like the work is what matters. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
I hear you. Well, I think we've covered quite a lot.
Yeah, we covered.
Is there anything? So, and real quick, like process wise, did you say what your setup was?
Oh, I don't know if I did. So yeah, real quick, my setup. I've gone through a number of tripods. Essentially, I've got a tripod that I built myself, and the pallet box that goes on it. So it's got the mast on top, and then the pallet box that opens up. But I've tried, like the Pashad boxes that sit on top of the tripod. Yeah, essentially, my what I need for my plein air experience is it's one of two things. One, either a small light tripod that I can hike with, or a larger tripod that I can work with larger work on, or when it's super windy. So I kind of have a setup for each one of those. Um, but no matter what, mobility is kind of important for me. So I want to be able to get to the hard to reach areas. Um, and I don't know where that stems from, but that's just kind of what I
I
want
think
the,
you're
I always
a
want the
little more,
ability to do whatever.
that's funny. I think you're a little more ambitious than me in your travels of where you're willing to hike with all that stuff. But it's a lot of stuff to carry. I mean,
Hmm.
it is heavy and you have to get it there and you have to get it out and you have to get the painting out safely as well,
Hmm.
without damaging it or having it blow away or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, kudos to you for going in there real far.
It's
I'm not gonna hike any mountains, but I will drive there and I will go a little ways, but I'm not gonna go Mark ways.
yeah. I used to be way more ambitious about it. I thought the hike was part of the experience. And in some situations it is. Like if we're painting out in Colorado, for instance, it's just nice to be able to go on a hike and then
Sure.
also paint. Um, but I used to tie, like a certain amount of value to the experience or to the painting. Like this painting is worth more to me because of the what it took to get there.
Hmm.
It's like you could do all that work and then do a crappy painting. And, so I've had that experience. So now I'm like, what do I want to paint? Is it easy to get to? Yes, no, doesn't really matter. It's just what do I want to paint? And then I'm going to go do that,
Sure.
you
And
know?
there are lots of times where you will pass a scene and you're like, oh, I would love to paint that, but there's nowhere to pull over, there's nowhere
Hmm.
to stand safely, there's no, you know, all
Hmm.
kinds of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, again, we're always balancing priorities. It's how badly do I want to paint that thing? You know, am I willing to stand on the edge of a rushing river and nearly fall in? Uh, or, you know, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I think that we talked about a lot of different topics that cover plein air. What do you think, Mark?
yeah, I think we definitely covered a lot of ground, maybe even more than I was expecting. Uh, but yeah, in terms of entry level stuff, more advanced stuff, it's the weird minutia of plein air life. I think we
Mhm.
nailed it.
The pros and cons. Yeah, and I'm hopeful that if there's anybody out there who was thinking about joining a plein air event or going out in plein air, that they have a little bit more of a sense of what supplies they're going to need
Hmm.
or how to apply to events or how to prepare for events. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, and if you're watching or listening and you have any questions, please throw them in the comment section. There's comment sections for both, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
depending on which platform you're listening to. But yeah, please,
Yeah.
I guess as the kids say, like and subscribe
That's so
and
funny.
leave a comment.
As those hip children say.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed our chat about plein air, and we hope to see you next time. I'm Tara,
And I'm Mark.
and happy painting, everybody. Bye.